Good morrow all. This is Newbark Gaming coming to you from the wonderful world of post-production. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Neospace Network Presents Game Club. Unfortunately, due to some unforeseen audio difficulties, we are unable to preserve the live intro of this episode in a quality sufficiently pristine for all of you space gazers out there. So, I'd like to take this opportunity to present our inaugural post-mortem intro. Good evening, mateys, lentilgin, goombas, and toads, people of all arcana identifications, and welcome to Neospace Network Presents Game Club. Episode 1 for Persona 3 Reload. This time we'll be discussing everything from the very beginning of the game to the first full moon event on May 9th in-game time. Now, what is Game Club, some of you may be asking? Game Club is a series where we take some of our favorite games and new releases, break them down into smaller sections, or chapters, if you will, then meet back here every week on Sundays at 4 p.m. EDT/EST on twitch.tv/Neospace Network to discuss all of the contents of said chapter with you all live. Ever miss an episode and want to get caught up? Every live stream of Game Club will be posted later that week right here on youtube.com/Neospace Network for your viewing pleasure. Now, without further ado, let's get space gazing. Thank you, Aurora Cosmos. We totally lost the game audio. I meant to mute that. I'm gonna have to hope that's in a separate track so I can fix that in editing. Hopefully that's better now. Alright, you were saying, Adi?
So there's an archaic term, Job. It means to scold, reprove, or lecture.
Alright, so we've all been
So now we
jobed
know.
today on the definition of jobed.
Okay,
Anyway.
great. That has nothing to do with me.
Jumping into the chapter discussion. Let's go ahead and get started here. So, what difficulty is everyone playing on? Since this was our first week diving right on into the game, and approximately a week and a half-ish after the game launched? Get us started here, Mono. What are you playing on? What's your difficulty?
So I'm playing on PlayStation 5 with just the normal difficulty.
A normie. You hear that, everybody? Can we get some straight boot? No, I'm just kidding.
Boo.
He's allowed to play how he wants.
No, I know. I
Thank
completely
you, Joe.
agree. No, seriously, like, difficulty things, I feel like it's just set it to whatever's going to give you the experience you're looking for. If that's the mode where you basically, like, auto-win the battles, great. And you get to experience the story, awesome. If it's, I want to experience masochism.exe, and you set it to the highest of difficulties, awesome too. Alright, J0B3, you're up.
No, actually, I think it's better if you go first, because mine has a story.
Oh, mine has a story too. Alright. So, folks, I am playing on Merciless difficulty. I actually had some gameplay footage ready of that final boss fight, but we'll dive into that a little bit more later. In terms of that, though, it's been a ride. Merciless difficulty on PC. We'll get into that later. Next up, Ebo, you're up.
I am playing on PS5 with hard difficulty.
Very good, very good. Alright, and then go ahead and hit us up, Adi. Where are you playing?
Perfect. So I'm honestly kind of bad at combat and social links in Persona. Okay, so kind of the whole game. But I really like it. So even though I have quote-unquote experience in JRPGs, I was by no means ready to crank up the difficulty any higher. So I'm just playing on normal. Although I am playing P5 Royal on the second highest difficulty. So there's that. And also, Merciless, that's something you bring up in therapy, not here.
Too late, man. I'm already neck deep. J0B3! You said there's a story behind it. Educate us.
Yeah, so I started on hard, because that's what I played on for the other Persona games that I've played, 5 and 4. And then when I heard that you were playing on Merciless, after finishing that chapter, I went back and I started a new playthrough on Merciless. And I haven't actually finished up to the first boss, but yeah, you know, my gamer pride was at stake, so I switched to Merciless, and I am on Steam as well.
Totally valid. Alright, so how's everybody feeling about those difficulties? Does it feel comfortable? Is it like eating a cold melon on a hot summer's day while bathing in the sun without getting burned? Or is it just absolute torture?
It's absolute torture, but for reasons unbeknownst to just difficulty.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, since the game starts off slower than I'm used to with other Persona games, you still only have 3 party members by the end of like the first 11 hours, which makes the game a little bit harder.
That's true. So you can't string together
Yeah.
combos quite as easily with that. I mean, you just because you're lacking one additional move, it also makes it so by the nature of it, you're lacking one additional element to exploit weaknesses with, or at least outside of the main pro tag. And even then, at this early in the game, we're still fairly restricted on the personas that we can access. So it definitely limits things more. How's everybody else feeling about their difficulty choice? Did you choose the correct pill setting, as in red or blue pill? I don't know which one's which for the difficulty, but nonetheless.
Honestly, for me, since I've played through Persona 3 before, it might be too early to tell, but I feel like the original Persona 3 is way harder on normal than Reload is on normal.
I would
Um,
agree.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
kind of enjoying it just being a little bit relaxed on this setting, since I just kind of like the story above all else. So I'm having a good time with it, honestly.
Gotta crawl before you can fly, you know? And well, that's okay. That's a horrible phrase for this. There's just as much enjoyment to be found in a peaceful walk as there is in a mile sprint. You know what I'm saying?
You and your analogies.
Exactly.
running,
That's what
but
I'm here for.
I agree.
And see, I even got support on this analogy. I'm not standing alone on this one. All right, moving on here. Job, you clearly have decided to rise to the challenge and meet me there on merciless difficulty so that we can suffer together.
Yeah.
Well, we'll start discussing that next week once you caught up to where I am.
Yeah, I did not fight the boss on Merciless yet, so
I guess now's as good a time as any for me to describe my experience with that boss fight, right?
yes.
So you get to the final boss in this chapter, and you face a countdown timer with the boss. In addition to it being pretty beefy in the sense that it can take a lot of hits before it goes down, right? And so I was managing to mostly stay alive during the boss fight without too many issues. I had a good amount of medical supplies ready to go to heal my characters up. I had things ready to go in terms of my attacks and buffs. I mean, if the battle extended a lot, I'd start to wear out just because this early in the game, you don't have a lot of one move and I can heal my whole party. So when the boss is up there spamming, I think it's, is it Bufula that hits your entire party?
Yeah.
After a while, that can start to chip at you just because you run out of turns to heal everyone up. Even if you're using a persona like Jack Frost that's immune to freeze on your main pro tag. But the problem I kept running into is I could not get enough damage off before that timer started to tick down. Then I remembered I had a trick up the back of my sleeve. One of the chests while crawling through Tartarus, or not one of the chests, I'm sorry. During one of the, I'm about to call it chance time from Mario Party. Whatever the thing is where you draw a card like Heart of the Card
Shuffle
Yu-Gi-Oh
time.
style at the end of the stuff.
Yeah, shuffle time.
Yeah,
Shuffle
shuffle
time.
time when you get the card at the end.
Yeah.
I managed to get a Garuda? Or no. What's the medium wind damage card?
Yeah,
I'm
I think
forgetting.
it's
Garlog?
yeah, that sounds right to me cuz I got the same thing actually.
Yeah, so I
Garuda's
got
the
one of
first one.
those and I used it right before the boss fight after I tried it like 3 or 4 times without using it. And that was my trump card. That was how I won. I put that on one of my personas and then it was just I'm going to refer to the pro tag as Makoto or Yuki just for simplification. But I put that on one of Makoto's personas and then I could immediately get through the rest of the boss fight. Wait, it
Yeah.
is Yuki Makoto, right? Or Makoto Yuki?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But yeah, that was how I got through it. Until then, it was a little rough. Also, while we're talking, actually, I'll get to that once we get to the boss fight. It's fine. Any last thoughts on the difficulty levels?
I might crank mine up for the next chapter. I don't know.
Try hard. I mean, one of the things I like about this game, right? And this is pretty common in modern games. You can adjust the difficulty level at any time with no penalty, unless if you're playing on Merciless and you lower it, you cannot go back.
Yes.
Oh wow.
So
you go back. It's all or nothing on Merciless.
yep, you either stay on Merciless or you're stuck on hard at the max as your max difficulty option for the rest of the game.
And there's no benefit to
Exactly.
playing on Merciless because there's not even an achievement for it.
Oh, really? So they
Ooh.
don't have a trophy built in.
Nope.
They don't have your
Nope.
virtual shiny plastic inside there if you manage to clear on Merciless.
Nope. That's why I was like, no, I'm not going for the mental torture of Merciless. I'll do normal hard.
Time out,
Yeah,
Audie.
that's-
You're playing on the Phil Spencer box. Does it have an
That's
achievement
right.
if you manage to clear on Merciless?
I'll have to check. I don't know. I know that it does have a lot of achievements and they're pretty cool, but I haven't looked really through them. But I can
Just
check
throwing-
later.
Fair enough. Aurora Cosmos said, Bufu D's nuts. Are we talking like cashews,
It's
pistachios,
pretty good, honestly.
almonds, peanuts, walnuts, hazelnuts? I'm a fan of all of them, so I'm up for any of those. Anyway, so any last thoughts on difficulty before we move on?
I think there's only so much we can say about difficulty at this
Fair
point.
enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So we've completed our first chapter. The one thing we've not done yet is what are everybody's general thoughts on this game?
Well, it's cool. I think
All right,
the
cool. Next section. No,
Such a way with words.
It is
um
exquisite.
yeah, it's very
verbiage.
blue.
There's
You
Very
managed to
blue.
there's a
summarize
lot
the
of
entirety
blue,
of the game.
A lot of blue,
It's incredibly stylish.
Time out. One
it's-
could even say it's a cool blue.
You really had to interrupt him just for that lame joke.
You're up, Audie. I'm
God.
sorry.
Well, now I
Ah.
forget what I was saying, but I'll try to revive it.
You said it was
It's
Once you say it
incredibly-
derailed, like that last boss fight.
No,
No.
there he goes again.
Oh boy,
It's
it's not gonna stop.
ahead,
Ari.
Ari.
I wonder if I'll ever get finished this thought. Anyway, it's incredibly stylish, but
I'm out.
even after
No, I
playing
forgot.
through it, even after just getting through this chapter, it lacks some refinement to the point where I don't think this is worth it as a $70 game.
Oh, really?
Interesting. Continue with your spicy take. I've been missing a little hot sauce in my life today.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, this game is amazing and fantastic, but for $70 on the latest generation platforms, I expect my textures to not look like JPEGs, and there's a lot of instances in this game where if you look a little too closely, it just kind of all falls apart. In fact, particularly with the personas themselves, I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but have you noticed that the personas themselves are kind of like low res compared to the personas in like Persona 5?
If I may
Like when you look at
quote
the models.
Sir John Linneman of Digital, or I'm sorry, it wasn't even John Linneman who did it. I think it was Audie's. Correction, it was indeed Oliver Mackenzie from Digital Foundry. Sterling from Digital Foundry? It's one of the Digital Foundry people, I believe, had said that the assets in P3 Reload are the same ones that they've been using for Persona 5 and Shin Megami Tensei 5. So, I guess in terms of the personas at least. So I think at least some of them are recycled and have been around for a bit. That could have
Well,
something to do with it.
Yeah, it kind of shows here and there. And yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Before this experience, I was kind of ready to, like, after I, wear out the Game Pass, it expires, I'd go buy the disc. Now I'm honestly not that sure.
Interesting. So is your primary gripe with the graphical, the sort of minimalist graphical take to a lot of the textures?
Kind of, and I know it kind of sounds like shallow at first, like, oh, the graphics just aren't good enough, but it's like, for a game that, and in so many other ways, it is incredibly stylish and looks incredible, but for, one of the first $70 games in fact, the first $70 game that I'm thinking of purchasing, it's like, I don't know if it's really worth it.
I mean, I feel like this is a game that's going to drop down to probably like 30, sort of like how Persona 5 has.
Pretty
so-
quickly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be
Hopefully.
selling for long. I don't think any game is worth $70. Uh,
Yeah,
honestly, I think that's
Yeah.
ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, I'll probably pick
Regardless.
it up when it lowers price.
Fair enough. I mean, I'll be honest. If we weren't playing through this for Game Club, I would not have picked it up at launch. Main reason for that being is just I usually wait for sales on games. I have a big enough backlog that it doesn't matter, which I think a lot of people are coming into that case. I mean, we're very lucky in the modern age of gaming in that even during like slow streaks by the main console manufacturers, for example, Sony's been having a dry spell in a lot of people's eyes for their major releases. There are so many games coming out that are so full of content that I feel like we always have something to play. We don't have to get every new release as soon as it comes out. You know what I mean?
Mm, no,
Yeah.
that's absolutely true.
All right, so I think that's a fair take though. I will say a lot of the textures are pretty minimalistic. I will say, as someone who has played some of the original P3 FES, it's interesting because this feels like they were trying not to overly deviate from what the original game looked like in a lot of aspects, while also making it high enough polygon and textures that it didn't look like I was just running it on a PS2 emulator with new lighting and stuff. I personally like it, and I'll say this. If going for a more simplistic style like this, in order to include some of the more modern graphical features like ray tracing while also achieving 60 FPS on consoles and on PC with reasonable performance expectations out of your hardware, and and less ballooned budgets for games or deadlines. I don't know what the budget or deadline or development time of this game was, but if that's the way that you start to bring those things under control, I'm totally okay with it. I see Audie's point, and I do agree that like for a $70 game, I think it's, especially since that price point's still relatively new, we're looking for these crazy
Right.
high res textures for everything, and we've been spoiled with that in a lot of games. But if this is what it takes to get a more regular release cadence that's healthier for the developers and their workflow and everything, and if they're in companies that don't have a very healthy workflow, personally, I'll say I'm a-okay with it. But that's a
Yeah, I
different
think I would agree
topic, I
with that.
guess.
Yeah. I think part of it might be because, like, I did just get the Xbox Series X, and one of the things I have been playing lately is the new Forza Motorsport, and,
Yeah, and
it's
those
just taken
always.
advantage of every single teraflop that thing has to offer, and then I switch back to Persona 3 Reloaded, I'm just like, "Oh, why does this not look as good?" So, I
Yeah,
don't know,
I mean,
maybe
you're
my
also comparing it
expectations
to
are
one of the
a bit
best
high.
looking games available at the moment. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Could just
car
be
games
that.
always look so good.
it's one of those
I
cases
Yeah.
where I don't think we're gonna see major improvements on car games again for a while.
like at all. I don't know how you can improve it. If I'm being
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah.
So fair enough. All right, so moving down the general thoughts list, Audie was kind enough to share that red hot spicy take with us. Who wants to go next?
Um, I want to go and say that like the game is, at least the story of the game is a lot slower compared to the previous Persona games I have played, which were 4 and
Really?
5. Like I have no idea what the main point of the story is comparatively to like 4 and 5, where like you knew what your goal was. Like, what's my goal here besides the dark hour? Like in
Hmm.
Persona 4, you knew you were hunting this murder mystery, pursuing the truth, and then in 5, you were fighting against the status quo. But like, what's the overarching theme here? I don't know yet. And I feel like I'm even more justified in this thought when it's close to the halfway through May, and I still don't have my fourth party member.
Whoa, time out here. We already knew what the theme was going into this game because Mono told it to us last week, and I quote, "The theme of this game is great, and I adore it because it is depression.exe," unquote.
What? When did I say
Yeah.
that?
I'm saying the opposite of what you said last week.
Because that's the. No, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything. I'm keeping my mouth shut right now.
No, I'm just giving you a hard time, man, because you had talked about in our episode 0 how You feel like a lot of people have that impression of the game before they play it, and it turns out to not really be that. There's a lot more depth and layering to the themes that go throughout the game. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
Yep. So I think that's an interesting point, though. I mean, for those of us that have played Persona 4 and Persona 5, they are a little bit faster to get going. I feel like, it's been a while since I played Persona 4 Golden, because I played it the real way on a PlayStation Vita, before the PC release.
You and your Vita supremacy.
No, I played it on a PlayStation Vita before the PC release, which, again, I'm glad it came to PC so more people can experience the game. But it's been a while. But if memory serves correctly, this pacing is mostly similar to what we saw with Persona 4 Golden. Oh, interesting. I'm wanting to follow along with the game book club, but I don't want to spend 70 buckaroos, so I'm trying to find what version to play to accompany this show. So one recommendation that you can do there is if you have a PC or you have an Xbox to game on, Aurora Cosmos, you could always try Xbox Game Pass. A lot of times they're running promotions where you can pay like $1 for a month of Game Pass Ultimate, and this game's on Game Pass right now, both PC and console. So that would give you a month to play it, and then if you paid, I think if you're just doing console Game Pass, it's $10 a month. Or if you're just doing PC, it's $10 a month. So you could have 3 months worth of playing for like $21, and that would get you into the game. Some other tricks you can use is if you have a friend that's subscribed to Humble Bundle, and they've been subscribed to that for a while on PC, they can share their 20% off store discount or something like that with you. That's what Job and I did, so he got the base version for I think $56. Still pretty pricey though. We're gonna get to how different this is from the original Persona 3 in a little while, but depending on that, you could always try playing along with like Persona 3 Portable, which is $20 across the board regardless of where you're buying it, unless you're getting the OG PSP physical release, and just mostly still have the same story experience as us. That's another option.
Yeah, honestly, before I started Reload, I was like getting hyped up for it with Persona 3 Portable, and I played almost about the same amount of time that we've got up to for this episode of Game Club, and yeah, the story is almost identical, really. So if you want to follow along with just like the narrative structure of things, going with the original or P3P is a pretty good way to go.
Yep. And the original, I haven't checked recently, but I picked up my copy of FES brand new off Amazon 3 or 4 years ago for like $30. And so if you've got a PS2 lying around or like a Fat Station 3 or whatever, that's fat with a PH, by the way, for the ultimate tier PS3, you can pop that disc in and be good to go. Heck, I'm pretty sure FES is even available digitally on the PS3 if memory serves correctly.
It is, yes.
Yep. And I think it's only like
Cool.
$10 or $15, I think. So, a couple different options, especially if you're willing to not go the P3 reload route. Another thing is we're going to be uploading all of these videos to YouTube. So, if you want to wait for the P3R experience, you could wait till that sale drops. We're all guessing probably sometime later this year. And then just go back and watch the videos on it. So, that's another option for you. But we appreciate you tagging along for this book club. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The more the merrier. So, I'm sorry, I cut somebody off with reading that chat. Ebo had just went on the first impressions of the game. We got Audie's hot take. Anything else? Or who's up next on their first impressions? I'm kind of curious to hear Mono's, because you've played through all of P3.
Indeed. So I really like it so far, and I'm playing with the Japanese voice cast, which, because I played Fez on an English PS2 or a North American PS2, I didn't get to hear that voice cast before, and I know we're going to talk about like voice acting later, but I'm so excited because there's so many recognizable voice actors, voice actresses amongst this cast that I was just super ecstatic, and that got me so excited, especially because Junpei in the Japanese voice cast is his voice actor voices one of my favorite characters of all time in a different franchise.
Wait, is it one of the main characters from Two Piece?
No.
Gosh darn it.
No. But I was flashbang me. I had to pause the game for like 20 minutes because I was
Wait, time out. If you got flashbanged, how were you still playing the game? Were
like
you
I said,
using,
I had to
like, your
pause for
other
20
s-
minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, pay attention.
Is that what
Yeah,
they mean
jeez.
by blind playthrough?
Ha 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 ha.
You're like still experiencing the flash from. Never mind. Go ahead.
All right.
We understand it was just lame. Please continue, Mona.
Wow, not the
Yeah.
beef.
You understand? It's just lame. Wow.
I can't take all this jobbing that's being done to me right now.
Oh god.
Come on, Job. You gotta tone down. Tone down the
Continue,
joke.
Mono. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. But going from, so I play my PS2 games on a CRT setup. So going from that to 60 FPS, 4K, ray tracing on an HD television, I feel like
It's just
I was like,
terrible.
why? No, it's
It's
just
a-
like, why are we going so fast? Everything is so quick, and my eyes are hurting. It's like too stylish. My puny brain can't handle it. I'm just enjoying it so much. I love this game, and everything about it so far is great. And all the quality of life improvements we'll talk about later is just so good.
Absolutely.
So, what are the quality of life improvements from the base game to the?
We'll
I
get
So
there.
yeah, we'll get there, but I'll point them
I'm
out when we get there.
gonna join on Mono's train because I have to be the contrarian for the group and say that I hate this. No, this game is fantastic. Stylistically, I would actually argue, from what I've played of it, it's a step up from Persona 5. Even a lot of people praised,
Ooh,
or I think Persona 5
spicy.
received a lot of widespread praise for its interface systems. The way that there was so much detail placed into the way that you were navigating the world, I feel like it helped make the slower, not slower, but less directly involved combat systems of a turn-based RPG feel more approachable for a lot of people because you weren't just engaged with the animations of the attacks. You were engaged with how fluidly those menus were flowing, how the fonts were chosen with the utmost of attention to detail, how everything just seemed to seamlessly blend into something that was popping off of the pages of your favorite manga or comic book in this brilliant, simple, but popping color scheme of red, black, and white. I think this game manages to do something very similar, but actually brings it up to an even higher level. When we're seeing things like the closing attack animations after doing an all-out attack, and you see the character's facial expressions flash on screen right away when you hit a character's weakness, something about that is just resonating with me harder than when I would see the loose equivalent in Persona 5. Couple that with the fact that the lighting and everything to me feels a little bit more advanced, and I'm wondering if some of that's a perk of this game running on Unreal Engine 4 versus Atlus's internal tech. But I think some of the things I'm enjoying about that also come down to more of a personal preference. Like, for example, when I look at this game, I see certain aspects of it that are drawing my memory to things like Shin Megami Tensei 5, especially in terms of the main protagonist's look from certain angles. It's like, oh, this feels like an asset ripped out of that game if it ran at a higher resolution for the Nintendo Switch. But overall, I think it's stylistically absolutely brilliant. We'll get to the music, but I have very good impressions of this game. It's the first time I've regularly kept up with a Persona game in a very long time. I'm enjoying trying to min-max how I'm spending each day a pretty good amount, especially since they've streamlined a lot of things. We'll get there. But I really enjoy it. So, Adi, you said spicy take. You would argue in favor of P5 over this stylistically?
I think that, for lack of a better term, Persona 5 had more agency with its style. You know, like there's that whole iconic comic book look that everyone talks about with Persona 5. There really isn't an equivalent to that I see in Persona 3 Reload. Now, don't get me wrong, even factoring in my earlier take, it's still a gorgeous game. The lighting effects, as you mentioned, are absolutely fantastic. The menus are insane in this one. Like, the way the character moves around with, like, what you do and, like, the little animations that they do, like, even when you're, like, sitting at the menu, not doing anything for, like, a few seconds.
I love how they have him, like,
it's
suspended
unmatched.
in water, upside down, while
Yeah.
you're in that menu. It's crazy.
And when you, like, scroll through the party members, like, he has, like, that little shard of glass over it. Like, that is just so cool. But while that all is the case, it's not really a unified style. Like, you can describe Persona 5, as I mentioned, like in comic book style, but I don't really have an equivalent for this one. I don't know. It's really hard to say which one's like more aesthetic. I've been like kind of going back and forth with it during my playthrough. I'm like, well, this one did this thing better, but Persona 5 did this thing better. So I don't know. But I haven't heard anyone say anything or recognize it to the point of Persona 5 yet, but who knows? Maybe when we get later in the game, we'll find something really cool.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so I think all of us have spoken on our first impressions here, except for you, J0B3. Fire
I'll just
away.
keep this brief. I mean, everyone has mentioned how visually appealing the game is. I think it's very appealing in that department. Like, I think it looks a lot better in Persona 5, both stylistically and just the resolution of the character models and all that. But I would say like you could call this game Persona 6, and up until Tartarus, I would believe you because it just seems like
We'll get on Tartarus. I have
that's
words.
that's for later, but
I have
yeah,
words there.
that's pretty much my thoughts on
I
the
think
game.
that's
I'm
probably
enjoying it a lot.
very good. I think that's probably a good place for us to jump next is Tartarus. I know that's out of order on our show notes sheet, but just based on the flow of our conversation, I think that's a good place to go next because that's a critical aspect of this game. So Tartarus is basically your dungeon system in this game. For those familiar with other Persona games, in Persona 4 you have your different dungeons that pop up. Each has a set number of floors you're trying to climb to the top. Persona 5 you have your palaces, which follow a structure that's a little more similar to Persona 4 than Persona 3, but the palaces have a lot more spice and interesting dynamics to them than the Persona 4 dungeons, which were relatively flat, and it was basically just change the theme of your typical, pretty much flat-floored dungeon crawler. Persona 3, we're basically doing a tower climb anime. You gotta get to the top of the floor of something, and you're just continuing through that same dungeon, gradually making your way higher. So, what are everybody's thoughts on Tartarus?
It's like if P5 only had mementos and it lacks
Yeah, that's
excitement.
yeah, that's like the perfect analogy, really, for people who have played Persona 5. Is that Tartarus is very, very, very similar to Mementos. It's you do go up floors, but they're randomly generated most of the time. So each time you go back to Tartarus, even if you've been on a floor before, a lot of times it's gonna look pretty different. But yeah, overall, I think it's pretty cool. I actually want to go to like Tartarus more often than I do in the game, but like I kind of just usually like I got to the roadblock and then I only went like back once after that. Yeah. Also, interestingly, oh wait, no, I guess I'll talk about this later when we talk about the differences between the like Reload and the others. But yeah, overall, I think it's really cool. Looks wise, it's a lot different. Well, I don't even know if I can say it's a lot different. It's kind of the same. I don't
The
know.
lighting,
Someone
I
else
think,
go.
enhances it a lot in this one. Because the original, like, FES, Tartarus was pretty flat looking.
Yeah. But it's also kind of flat here too.
Yeah, but I'd still say it's a decent step up.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
another
yeah.
thing though is that it's not at like an isometric view.
Yeah.
It follows the player character, which kind of helps make it not look as flat. I know it's not as like visually interesting as maybe some of the other like I don't know palaces in Persona 5, for example. But even then, I feel like some of those got like once you're in a palace for a while, it starts to all look the same. It's not like super dynamic. I know there's exceptions to that, but I do think it's definitely a step up. And New Bark, you're totally right with the lighting thing. That helps make it a little bit better. So yeah.
For sure. One thing I definitely want to bring up about Tartarus that's unless it came later in Persona 3 than I played, was they now have the gem system where you're smashing those fragments to collect things as you travel throughout it. I believe Twilight fragments are also new.
Yes, both of those things are new actually. So the things that you smash, I don't actually know at this point in the game what they're for. I haven't experimented with
So
that.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Being the min-max player among the group.
Ah.
you can sell those to the officer who sells you gear.
Okay, that makes
And
sense.
so far I have not discovered another use for them, and I've noticed in at least some of their descriptions it talks about their value. So I'm assuming their
Other than-
primary purpose is to sell them.
Okay, then actually that's good because I found myself struggling making money in the beginning, so I
Yeah, it was a
will
little
make
bit
a use
tough. I'll say that.
But the Twilight fragments is actually pretty interesting. The locked chests, that's new. I think that was carried over from Persona 5 at least. I don't know about Persona 4, I can't speak on that. But locked chests weren't a thing in at least Fez. Um, and so you can use the Twilight fragments for the chests as well as the clocks. The clocks are new because originally there's just a clock at the beginning or at the entrance of Tartarus, right? And in Fez, that was the save point. You couldn't just save wherever. Um,
Hmm.
and so now you can use 7 Twilight fragments to, put them into a clock and refill your HP and SP, which is interesting because every time you went to the entrance of Tartarus, your HP and SP would refill automatically. But now that's not a thing, and you have to essentially pay for that feature, and it's a one-time use, so you can't just unlock a clock and then use that infinitely to refill SP and HP, which it is now, creates some sort of resource management with the Twilight fragments, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel it's kind of annoying. It's like taking a feature away that was originally there, and making it sort of, I guess, a more like difficult.
I do wonder if they were trying to make that as a balancing factor, because the original
Right.
P3, and we're kind of bleeding into the differences here, but I think this is appropriate to bring up for this topic. The original P3 also had a gameplay mechanic that had to do with exhaustion. So if you
Uh-huh.
as you played more in Tartarus, each of your characters also had a status that showed their level of fatigue or exhaustion. This was completely unrelated to their HP and their SP. And if a character got tired, they started to be really crappy in battle. Like they would miss their attacks. I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mono, they actually started to take more damage from attacks as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they've completely removed that. And they've also added they've added things like basically the baton pass system from Persona 5. So if you hit a weakness on an enemy, you can then pass your attack to a different party member to attack.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if the Twilight fragments being added as an additional layer of resource management was another means of balancing that. Because you were saying that it used to be if you return to the bottom floor of Tartarus, everything went back to full.
That is correct, yeah.
So
I
I'm
mean,
wondering
I
if they
definitely,
added this as like a way of balancing that out to some extent.
yeah, I guess from that perspective, it doesn't bother me because I know a lot of the reason why people didn't like Tartarus to begin with is that a lot of it was, people thought it was repetitive, but the fact that you had to go to Tartarus multiple times within like a week, for example. But now you can technically spend as much time as you want in Tartarus, as long as you can, get those Twilight fragments and refill your SP, or have enough items to refill those gauges. So you can, only visit Tartarus once a month if you really wanted to in the game,
Yeah,
and
as
that
long as
might
you build
make
up
it
your
work better.
resources enough.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that does balance it out with what, as you were saying, being able to, have your SP refilled, but there's a cost to it.
Yep. So have you got, out of all of us, has anyone actually used their Twilight fragments at a clock so far?
I have.
I've
Yeah,
not.
I have. I
I have
thought it
not.
was like you had to pay for the clock and then it was just unlocked from there. So I
Ah, so it was a
wasted
one-time
7.
purchase.
Yeah, so I wasted 7 without realizing that.
Oof.
Fair enough. What about you, Adi? Job?
Nope.
Yeah, I've never used the clock.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a better judgment call on how many Twilight fragments we have. The other thing is, as a resident min-max player that's rolling through my head, is I know in the flow of Persona games, as you get further into the game, there's more and more things you're trying to squeeze into your schedule. So I'm trying to make it so that
Yep.
my optimal, like, 1 day done in Tartarus comes later when I need that time more desperately.
Hmm.
So, any last thoughts on Tartarus before we move on?
Not a thought, but I did have to add that you can just get, I don't know if someone brought this up. I don't think anyone did, but there are Twilight fragments that you can get in those little things that you bust up in Tartarus.
I found, I think, one that way.
Yeah. Though it'll be really obvious. It'll be like glowing blue.
Yeah,
You
they're
can
rare,
also
I think.
you can also find them around town and stuff.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the
Though I don't
that's-
think those ones respawn. I think they're one and done,
That is correct. Yeah.
yeah.
unfortunately.
After that, I think you have to rely on getting them from Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright. So moving right along here, let's talk a little bit about our side casts. What's everybody thinking in terms of their character? Or their characters, I should say.
In terms of social links, is that what you're asking?
Social links and, like, party members. One important thing to point out, unlike Persona 5 and Persona 4, most of your social links in this game are not party members.
Yeah.
So,
True.
go ahead and get us started, Mono. You chimed in first.
Sure. So I know the social links I'm pursuing right now are Kazushi, who is the track team member.
Yep.
The other one is Maiko, who is the little girl at the shrine.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm also pursuing Yuko, who is the team manager. Yes. And
Yep.
then Hidetoshi, who I believe is the student council guy. I don't remember his position. So those are the four that I'm focusing on right now. As for like side content, I really have been focusing on a lot of the part-time jobs, which are so cool because you can get money and skill points.
Yep.
So
As
I've
a
been trying to do that
min-max
as much-
player, I love those things.
Yeah, that's a new feature. The part-time job system is new to Persona 3, so that's pretty cool.
Very good, very good. So out of those characters, who's standing out to you so far among your social links?
Since I've done all the social links before, I already know who my favorite is, which would be Yuko. I think she's a
Okay.
really cool character, and I like her growth. I won't elaborate beyond that, but she is definitely my favorite of the side characters.
When you say growth, how much taller does she get? Is it like 6
Oh my
inches, a
God.
foot, 3 feet?
Oh
Or is
my
it width?
Could
Yeah, it could
be. Or
be
like
with-
muscular girth? Does she become like super
Ooh.
jacked? Like she
You
could
just
rip
have
your
to
head off?
play and find out for yourself, Newbar. Come on.
Gosh darn it.
exactly.
No spoilers here. Or it could be like fungal growth. You never know. Like maybe
This
isn't
maybe
the
she
Last of
goes and she
Us.
gets like poison ivy somewhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we aren't playing The Last of Us here. It's a different game.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
hope it's the last of these bad jokes.
Da-da-tss. Fair
Uh,
enough. So moving right along here, Ebo, hit us up.
My social links.
Yeah.
I'm doing. What is it? I did the ones that Mono had mentioned. Kazushi, Yuko, and then the student council
Yep.
guy. Hidetoshi. Hidetoshi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ogiri,
Hidetoshi.
yeah.
Odagiri.
And then I also did the MMORPG player,
Oh yeah. Yep.
Mm.
The
Oh,
hermit,
yeah.
Maya.
and then the bookstore.
I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
yeah.
Maya is just a giant
Couple.
reference to one of the Persona 2 games.
It
It
is.
is.
Is
It literally is.
uh,
It's literally called NsN Online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So time out
To
for a second. How
Persona
far did
2.
everyone get in Maya's social link?
I got to like rank 4 or 5.
I was rank 3. And I
Yeah,
found it
I'm
very
3.
interesting that she got drunk.
I loved that.
I love that too.
Wee.
But then, like, when she was talking about deadlines and stuff, and the fact that she was getting, like, work getting behind on things at work, and so she ended up needing to work at home. I was like, oh man, she understands the
relatable.
grind, man.
Yeah.
Very good. Who among those Evo is your favorite thus far?
Um, hmm, I don't think I have a favorite. Oh, I don't know if I have my favorite yet. Probably out of those, probably Yuko so
So
far.
real.
He does
At the
seem pretty
moment.
chill, I'll say. Granted, I'm only at level 2 with her social link at the moment. Alright. Any other characters people want to bring up?
Kenji.
Are you not gonna ask me about my thoughts?
Kenji. Oh, but Kenji is like the one we all have to go through, like at least rank 1. He's like
Oh
the
yeah.
first.
Oh, our
Unfortunately.
magician. No, we're gonna get to you, Audie.
I
That's why.
know.
Well, we've talked about a lot of them. That's why I'm saying like other thoughts you
He-
want to add to that, so we're not just reiterating the same things.
It is kind of odd though. He's basically just simping for his teacher.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
he's kind of a pervert.
I'm hoping for some character growth.
I kind of
I
love him.
really, I really liked the one dialogue option that pops up though when like I think like you first take him to like the ramen shop. Yeah, and there's one of the options to be like, just shut up and eat.
Sure, whatever, man.
And it's so funny because remember like when the pro tag agrees to hang out with him, he's like, oh, maybe I can expand my social abilities. Like maybe I can connect with this person. And then like the first dialogue option is shut up and eat.
Yeah.
It's so funny to me.
It's the equivalent of I'm talking to you so I don't get fined. Like, so you don't have Igor show up and be like, "What are you doing?" Very good, very good. So you sounded like you had something you wanted to contribute, Adi. Fire away.
Oh, absolutely. So I don't. It's less to do with the social links themselves, but kind of a thing that I've noticed. Why is Yukari always so disgusted with Junpei? It feels like every time Junpei ever says something in the group, Yukari immediately goes like, "Ugh." Like she's just viscerally loathing him, and it's honestly getting kind of annoying. I don't
So
know.
for a
Does
minute, I
anyone else
thought you were
notice
gonna
that?
say Mitsuru, and I have an observation about that I think is related to it. And Mono can
Hmm.
correct me if I'm mixing names up. We'll get to that in a minute. For Junpei, I'm guessing it's I don't know how to describe it. I feel like based on their interaction when they were climbing up to the train right before the final boss fight, or final boss fight for this chapter, right? Like maybe Junpei has been kind of like one of those more obnoxious guys to her growing up, because
Yeah.
they've mentioned how they were in the same class before, so maybe he just kind of got under her skin and she's just sick of dealing with it. I don't know.
I think it's sort of
Hmm.
like Ryuji and An, and that sort
Oh,
of
obviously.
dynamic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
can see
think
that.
I think Persona games always have you revolve around like I guess like the same archetype of characters. Like they're like you said, they're direct parallels to like Ryuji and Junpei, An and Yukari, so on and so forth. Even going back to like Persona 1, if you want to go back that far. But yeah, I don't know. Just something I've noticed and it's kind of weird to me. But maybe we'll
All I'll
see
say
more.
is I'm glad we don't have Teddy so far.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, there's also just a lot we don't know about these characters yet, to the point where they almost feel bland. But I don't know. Hopefully, we'll find out more about them.
You gotta
But I
read
guess in terms
into
of
it.
social, yeah, in terms of social links, I am doing all the ones that people have mentioned. But my favorite is actually the old couple. I don't know. They
I'm
they
only
just
one.
they just
I
rub
think
me
that's
the
because
right
we're
way in
old
terms of
men.
their. Yeah, they just rub me the right way in terms of like banter and everything.
Yeah, you can bond
Hey,
over
How
certain
far
say
have you
topics to get
January!
off your
how
lawn
far have you
together.
gotten into the old couple?
Oh, I'm like rank 4, I think, and then I hang out with
Do
them
you
a
know
lot.
like what like the whole like thing yet with them?
You can
Their
go for it,
painful
Evo.
past.
I think we
Yeah.
said no
Yeah.
hold bars on the social links.
Oh, like how like okay, so like the whole point of their story arc is like their son died in like a car accident, and like
Yeah.
while like and the husband is like going through a case of either Alzheimer's or dementia. I can't remember exactly. He
Yeah, because he
forgets
keeps
things
saying
a
it's a
lot.
sushi shop.
That was
Keeps
pretty funny.
forgetting keeps forgetting things, and like it seems like there could be something really good there. It's just we need to let it stew for a second.
Yeah. Also, like in real life, I just love old bookstores. So like when I saw one in person, I was like, ah, yes! I'm gonna spend all
Bookstore.
my time here. But fortunately, I can't actually look at the books, which is kind of weird.
Absolutely.
That's
So
just
I was gonna
that's
actually
just
speak to
because
that.
we're old men.
Oh, go ahead, Evo.
That's just because we're old men and want to look at books.
Yeah.
I was gonna speak to that, Evo, because you were talking about, or not Evo, Adi, because we were talking in episode 0 about how you wanted to be able to enter the arcades and see the different JPEG of your characters playing
Yeah.
things. So I would
Yeah,
imagine being
they
able to open the
added,
books.
or at least like, because remember it was a mechanic in Persona 5. You could actually buy books and like read them. I thought that was pretty neat.
It
But
was.
yeah, I guess there was nowhere to fit that in.
Yeah, and like you don't have the train travel sequences in this like you did in P5,
Yeah.
where occasionally
Well,
you'd find a seat.
well, technically your character does ride a train a lot when you go back and forth on the map,
Excuse me,
but
it's a monorail.
uh, whatever. He rides the public transport a
With
lot.
the where the whoozy what's it is on the bottom of the train instead of the top of the train for the electricity, where you're not paying attention
Oh
in
yeah.
class.
The pentagram? What was it called?
Yeah, I think
What?
it was
Did you
something
say
like
a
that.
pantalone?
No, a pentagram? I don't even
A
remember what it's called.
pentagram? What?
Yes.
No.
Were you
Well,
paying
you
attention,
said,
Newberg?
yeah, well, you
No.
summon the demons to move the monorail, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Infinite electricity. No, very good. So to speak for the
There's a
characters,
graph. I think we're saying gram when we should be saying graph.
that's because we need to
Oh,
look at this
yeah.
graph. Every time I see it, I think of the past. No, in terms of the characters, one thing I wanted to bring up was who was it? Someone was speaking about Yukari before, and how she has this thing against Junpei. She also clearly has a thing against Mitsuru, and I'm pretty sure that's because if you track the names carefully, I'm pretty sure she had said when her father, and if I'm remembering her words correctly, supposedly died, he was working for the Kojiro group, which is the same last name as Mitsuru, implying that I'm wondering if she suspects or somehow blames Mitsuru's family for the passing of her father, which is why she has a grudge against her.
It's a Kirijo.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you for
Kirijo,
correcting.
there we go.
Yeah,
Someone
I
else
think
can
there's
tell me if
definitely
I'm mixing up
something.
names.
No, you're correct.
Okay.
I think there's definitely something there, and there have been multiple times where Yukari has like commented on Mitsuru, just going like, "Why is she like that?" And then
Yeah.
immediately going like, "Never mind."
I feel like there's Mitsuru has a major air of mystery about her. And I'm not just talking about,
Yeah.
as Adi kind of pointed out, to where we don't know these characters super well yet. There's something about her that I feel like I can't quite put my finger on what exactly is going on there. And so, like, she knows a lot more than everybody else. She's in this leadership position even more than the teacher that runs SEES. She's the president of the school. People have commented on how she speaks wiser than, like, the principal of the school. I mean, obviously, it's possible she's just extremely talented. But I feel like with the general air of mystery that I think this game has created, probably even more to an extent than Persona 4, which is basically just one giant murder mystery, it almost feels to me
Yeah.
like they're hinting at something.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah. There was even that deliberate choice to keep that like little radio snippet in that the cutscene for like the midnight hour. You seen that with the guy like melts?
Yep.
It was just like Korijo Electronics here to serve you, or like whatever it is. So yeah, they're laying it on a little heavy there. I like it.
Yeah, there's part of me that wonders if like her family's up to something sketchy and she knows it, and so she's trying to stop it. I don't know.
Could be.
We'll see. We'll see. Any last thoughts on characters before we move on, folks?
Nope.
Alrighty. So moving on to a key aspect of all Persona games, audio. How do we feel about the voice acting and the music of this game?
The voice acting is great, but something along the lines of voice acting that is new to the series is that every rank and social link is fully voice acted, which is interesting.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, the side characters are now voiced, which is really cool.
Yeah, like in like Persona 5, like it was usually like the initial time you meet like the confidant, and then the max rank, they were voice acted. And same thing for Persona 4, but in 3 Reload, everyone is voice acted through the entire social link. That adds more personality to the game. That, and I
Absolutely.
just I like listening to voice actors.
Very good, very good. I will
Like
say on the
random.
music front, I really enjoy the track for when you're walking around the city
Oh,
at night, and I
oh
think
my
that's a
god,
new
it,
one.
Mm-hmm.
it's straight slaps,
It's
straight slaps.
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic.
It's fire, like straight. There's n- mm. It's like one of those things where you put the controller down and you just sit there and listen to
And
this
yeah,
music.
you space out and listen.
Yep.
Oh
I
yeah.
want the soundtrack to be on like Spotify so I can go into work
Quick
less
yeah. Quick disclaimer
like
about the soundtrack. If you buy the digital deluxe edition on Steam, it comes with, or one of the deluxe editions, comes with the soundtrack, but they give it to you as like a .exe program you have to launch for some reason. So
bruh,
What?
stupid.
bruh.
Yep.
This is why you get the physical edition that comes with the CD.
Yeah, but that was the collector's edition, which we all ratted on last week.
I know it was straight Garbo.
All right.
Two
Any
hundred
other
bucks.
thoughts on audio before we move on?
Music. Actually, I do want to bring up one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The new battle track is. I know we also have a similar rendition of Mass Destruction. When it's the Shadow Advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you have a Seize Advantage,
Well, actually, I
it's
wouldn't
a
know
new.
because I never let the shadows get the advantage. You scrub. No,
All right, buddy. Well, you're missing out
I'm just,
on the
I'm just
better
kidding. I'm
version.
just kidding. I did actually get the shadow. I've had the shadows get the advantage. I think.
I'm
Skill issue.
I'm personally more of a fan of the original, more similar, or at least more closely based on the original Mass Destruction. I'm not too sure how I feel about like the main battle track. But I don't know what the name of it is. I'm still sort of leaning more towards Mass Destruction as my preferred battle theme.
Are you talking about the original on PS2 Mass Destruction or like the one on Persona 3 Reload?
So
Because
right, so I'm talking about in Persona 3 Reload, excuse me. When you get hit by like a shadow, there's a similar track that is Mass Destruction, but when you do Seize Advantage, then there's a different track with a more of a vocal presence of whoever the main vocalist is. And I don't know what the track is, but they are two separate tracks. And the Shadow Advantage is more similar. It is basically just another rendition of Mass Destruction from the original Persona 3.
Ah, okay.
Does that make sense?
So they
and you're
reused the
saying you
track in a new way.
Exactly.
Very
wait,
good.
so
Very
technically
good.
there are three different options. There's normal battle, shadow advantage, and seize advantage.
Right.
So, between normal battle and shadow advantage, are those two tracks different?
Question. I believe so.
think so.
I've only gotten, I think, Seize Advantage and Shadow Advantage, so I wouldn't know what the sort of like in
The
between
normal
is.
one's really specific because the shadow has to like see you and be approaching you as you land the blow, without them
I
hitting
thought the
you
normal.
first.
Yeah, I've gotten that one before. The normal, that one's just mass destruction, but
Okay.
like re-recorded for Persona 3 Reloaded. Is that the one you're talking about?
Assume so. I would assume so.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear. Yeah, that one's interesting because I prefer the original to that one. I think it's in the way that the vocalist pronounces like baby baby, like she goes like baby baby
Yeah,
instead of
no,
baby.
I absolutely agree.
Is it like Justin Bieber?
Don't much.
Anyway.
Stop.
But yeah, it's definitely like since there is a vocalist change, I think both vocalists are talented. It just creates this like tonal shift, especially in terms
Yeah.
of like the I don't know what the musical term for that is when there's like
different pitches in terms of vocal strength. I know there's a word for that. I'm just forgetting what it is. And then as well as the pronunciation differences. That's another thing. So it just
Yeah.
definitely creates a new tone to some of these original tracks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like the Awadadai dorm is very noticeably different.
There's also
Well,
new
that one
lyrics
is-
for that as well.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
changed the lyrics. It's really weird.
It's a more chill vibe compared to the original.
Which I think
The
makes
new
sense
lyrics are
though,
kinda
because this
cringe, in
game
my
feels
opinion.
less high-strung than the original. The original, because of like the fatigue system and everything, it's very much a case where it feels like if you mess up a little bit, you're really up a creek, especially in the battles.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's a thing in Reload, but I remember in Persona 3 Portable, there's also a thing like your party members can just like randomly get sick on a certain day, and then like they just wouldn't be good in battle that day for no reason, just because
I
they're sick.
believe
think I remember
that's
that, yeah.
That's linked to the tired system as well, I believe, because
Oh.
you could visit like the nurse's office. You still can technically.
Oh my gosh, the
Um,
nurse mechanic.
Yeah,
Is
Is
that
that
a
when I
thing
talk
in
about
Reload?
optimization?
right. So the nurse mechanics or the nurse feature, I guess, is still a thing in Reload. I haven't used it yet, so I don't know how different it is.
You're missing
but
out,
like,
man.
yeah, I know that there's like perks or like new perks to visiting him. But in the original, if you got like sick or you were too tired, you could go to him and he would give you like some concoction and it
Huh.
would change your, status.
Yeah, I don't know how to use that in Reload. I just keep like going to the door and they're like, "Oh, I hear the nurse gives out weird medicine," and then my character just like goes away. It's like, well, okay.
It's not even okay. I meant to bring this up during characters, or I should have, but I just now thought of it. The nurse character in this game is freaking hysterical. It's walking into a D&D player's like dungeon room. He's like,
Oh,
oh yeah, I
really?
put some mugworts in there, some witch's fingernail, some swamp beast's hair follicle. Here,
Is that
drink
the dude
it. And you're
who
like,
gave?
what's this?
Does he give like a lecture in your class at one point?
Yes, he does, and he's talking
Yes.
about magic.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's okay.
Only because he's talking about magic, instead of a lecture, perhaps we could call it a gathering, if you will.
Yikes.
Sorry, I don't play that nerd shit.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. I only play the Pokemon TCG where the real cool kids are.
Sorry, I don't play that nerd shit.
Alrighty. I don't even. Okay, we were on audio. Any other thoughts on audio?
Igor's voice is kind of interesting to me because I can't stop comparing it to the notably deeper Persona 5 Igor voice. That's the only like real time I've heard
Oh,
Igor's
you're playing on
voice.
the Eagle setting.
I have a
English
question
setting.
to Ari. I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Did you beat Persona 5?
No, not yet.
Okay.
It's only you and Ebo here that have done that.
Get on it. Ah, dang. It's so good.
But also what I think is funny is you know the like shopping channel that like the host Tanaka?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really funny to me that his voice does not match his art at all. Like he looks really tired and like fatigued in the art, and then like he's supposedly on the TV going like, "And now my new amazing commodity." Like
He's just the average
actually go
college
back
kid,
and
has
just-
massive bags under the eyes, is extremely exhausted, downs a monster right before class, seems like they're lively and good to go, then gets home, face plants onto the desk because they're trying to do work or other things they're actually passionate about, wash, rinse, repeat.
Okay, too relatable. Stop. Anyway, I like going back and rereading his lines as if he's really tired. I don't know. It's just kind of a funny thing to me.
Tanaka
Yeah.
was my goat, and that's all I'm gonna say.
Fair.
Alright. Any last thoughts on audio?
Nope.
Alrighty, moving right along here. So, thoughts on the battle system and mechanics of this game?
I like it because it's like Persona 5.
Hey, you know that other game I like? They copied and pasted it.
Yeah.
That means it's good. You're not wrong,
Literally.
though, I mean...
Yeah.
We
You
were
can
talking
actually
about...
control your party members.
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
So this
Yeah,
section
that's
is going to
really
bleed a lot
interesting.
into like quality of life improvements. Battle system in this
Mhm.
game, a lot more forgiving than the original Persona 3. You don't have fatigue getting in the way. You can control your party members directly, which you couldn't in Persona 3, which allows for a
And by
lot more
default.
strategy. You have basically the baton pass system where if you get a one more, you can pass it on to a different party member, which is ridiculously useful for stringing things together. It's much more user friendly and fast paced. If you're used to Persona 5, I'd say for the most part you'll be right at home here.
And I am indeed right at home here.
It
Yeah,
also go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like you said, it's fast paced. It feels great. Everything is just so smooth. The baton passing, shifting system, or whatever, it really that is such a good feature. Because I think what I struggled with in the original Persona 3, especially, is that like once you get into battles where there's a lot more shadows and there's a lot more like variety, trying to like take down all of them without like how you if you use a different thing, a different like spell or whatever, then it will like get shadows out of a reverse they're like knocked down or whatever, and that could be annoying. But the shift system sort of like prevents that, especially if you have like each character has a persona that has a specific spell that you need to use to knock down like
Yeah.
one shadow, if that makes sense. So I think that's a really cool feature.
And speaking to that note, because you have direct control over the party members, I think it allows for two additional things. I feel like when you actually do lose a fight, like on Merciless difficulty, I mentioned before how I lost to the boss fight several times before I accomplished it. I felt like I could actually learn from the mistakes without feeling nearly as much like maybe my battle was manipulated by bad RNG from a party member or something like that. And it felt a lot less tedious. I didn't play a ton of the original Persona 3, but I always felt like I was constantly going in and changing my party members' tactics and then hoping they interpreted those tactics the way I wanted them to.
Mm-hmm.
And then building off of that, it also helps to conserve SP on your main character a lot because you can directly control your party members rather than needing to just be like, okay, my main pro tag's up. If I really gotta do something, I gotta guarantee I get it done with that. Or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Because you have that baton pass system, I feel like you can conserve it a lot better. Kind of like what you were mentioning before, Mono. It would be a case of where you had one party member and they'd knock down one of your 5 or whatever enemies on screen, and then you'd have to hope they don't get back up or you don't get injured too badly or whatever in the other turns that happens between you and the party member that you need to hit another shadow's weakness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
The tactic system in the original Persona 3, it does have some merit. I thought it was cool at times, but of course it does rely on RNG, which is quite annoying in an RPG. But I think one thing does that the tactic system does highlight that I feel does feel a little bit missing from Reload is that it doesn't feel like your character is separate from your party. It feels like you're controlling everything rather than like in the original. It sort of felt like there was some sort of distance between you all, like you were your own
yeah.
individual and so were your party members.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, I think it lends a unique quality to the original. Whether you like that or not is up to you. I actually know another friend who's not part of this Game Club podcast who is a big fan of Persona 3, and I remember them telling me, I'm pretty sure at least, one of the ways they would choose their party members was based on how good that party member's AI was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, so moving right along here, y'all, because I know we're starting to run out of time on tonight's episode. Let's see. So we just talked about the overall gameplay. Any other thoughts we want to add on that?
One thing I noticed, uh, like your personality traits are way more simple than the previous games, 4 and 5. There's only 3 personality traits: academics, courage, and
Charm.
charm. Charm.
Based on what I'm seeing so far to speak to that, I feel like there's a certain simplicity that this game has as opposed to, it's been so long since I've played 4, I can't really speak to that, as opposed to what I've played of 5, in the sense that, like, most of the same systems are there, but they're in a slightly more simplified form, which makes it feel a little bit more streamlined now that the quality of life improvements of 5 have mostly been implemented here. And there's part of me that kind of likes that, because it makes me feel a little bit more relaxed when playing this one, because I don't feel like I have quite as much to manage yet.
Keyword, yet.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, folks? Am I the only one that noticed that?
I mean, it's for me. I do appreciate the simplicity, and you got to remember it is like a PS2 game, or it was, that this is based on, obviously. So the simplicity, it comes from the fact that it is the predecessor of the other games, and it does. And I'm just gonna say this for now, personally, with my experience through Fez, it becomes manageable throughout the whole experience. There's no really moments of stress when it comes to like skill points or whatever. Which I feel like it gives you a lot of autonomy to choosing what you want to do, rather than adhering to a strict schedule.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's if you're not min-maxing,
True.
I'm assuming. Alright, so if there aren't a whole lot of more comments on that, that's a nice segue into min-maxing. So I'm going to spew out a couple patterns I've noticed, like both for my fellow game club co-hosts here and our viewing audience, for things that may be like helpful to you, or just patterns I've noticed that have helped me manage my time pretty efficiently in the game. So first off, vending machines refill on Sundays, and at least when I play the game, I want to make sure I get the SP cans from those vending machines every opportunity I get. So before you start unlocking additional special stuff, I'll get to that in a second, you can get 6, I believe it is, SP cans every Sunday that I've found. And those are spread across 3 different vending machines, because you're capped at buying 2 cans from each of the SP refilling items. Speaking to those unlockables, what you'll find out is once you gain access to the nightclub in Paulownia Mall, or is it Paulownia? Paulownia Mall? There's a guy who sells URLs there. One of them that you can buy from him gives you a secret that then reveals, oh, there's one of these vending machines where you can buy sold out items. And I believe it's either the one in front of the movie theater or the one outside the train station has additional SP items you can buy after you use that URL. In addition to, from that same URL distribution guy, if you buy the other URL code at this part in the game, that will unlock an extra item you can buy from the school store. I don't know what that does yet. It is a taiyaki that you have to refrigerate before using. And when I went to try and use it, then store it in the fridge back at the dorm, speaking of which, you have to use the one in the lobby, not the one in your actual room. You can't store it there until May 31st. So that's a TBD item. Speaking of the school store, every Friday you can buy a special bread there. I believe it restores either 75 or 100 health with no side effects, and it's much cheaper than your standard 100 health restoring item. So good stuff there. As Mona was mentioning before, so far from what I've seen, the part-time jobs are a great way to optimize earning some money, because money starvation early in this game is something at least Mona and I have both noticed. How about the rest of you?
I've definitely noticed it.
Sort of, yeah.
Like, it's not
Yeah.
terrible, but there are times where it's like, I need to be a little cautious here. So being able to boost those social skills while also getting money is definitely a good thing. I've also noticed one thing to take advantage of is go to the Fox Shrine every single day to duplicate a card, even if you don't think you need it, I think is a good idea. That way you have those extra abilities when and if you want to use them. Like I mentioned how I got through that last boss was using my, I think it was Garula card on one of my personas. And if I wouldn't have duplicated that at the Fox because I didn't think I needed to right away, I'd be out having that card. But because I still have the original copy, I can continue to duplicate it as many times as I need to. I feel like there was one other thing that I was going to mention, and now I'm completely blanking on what it is. Oh, get seasonal items from the Beef Bowl place. They had a really good one that was a health restoring item one night, but in order to gain access to that, you need to use one of the internet books from the strip mall. And you can use those at night in order to unlock things. and then you're able to get carry out from that beef bowl place. From what I've seen, the really good items are one-time purchase so far. It was a special spring set, but still was pretty cool. Any other tips or tricks people have noticed that they want to point out? That was my little ramble.
I don't
What's
have any tricks, but
there's
my-
what is it? The one place where you can get like the seafood special where you increase your academics and something else. Forget what it
Okay,
is.
I haven't seen that yet.
where was that?
Maybe the ramen
It's
shop
not the
with the
ramen
flower
shop.
outside.
It's next to it, yeah. It's like on the second floor of the station mall. It's
Okay.
on the
Yeah,
very
yeah, I
left.
know what you're talking about.
Wakatsu?
Yeah. You have to have
Okay.
like a high enough charm to be able to eat the seafood.
Gotcha, gotcha. Oh, that was the other thing I forgot. Mona, when you were talking about the nurse before, every time you enter Tartarus, the next day you can go speak to the nurse and drink one of his potions, I guess, for lack of a better word, because he talks about him like he's using all these magical ingredients. It's medicine, I guess. If you drink that, it will increase your courage. And from what I've seen so
Oh.
far, the game I think kind of writes it in a way that it seems like there could be negative side effects. I think I've done it either 2 or 3 times and I've never had a negative side effect. Has anyone?
I didn't even know that this was a thing.
Okay.
And does this like cause time to pass or no?
No, it's just free courage boost from what I've seen.
Okay, then that's actually a pretty good tip. I'll
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate because I think when I went to Tartarus, it was like the next day there was like some other event and I couldn't even do that if I wanted to.
Rip, dude, that sucks.
Like a weekend or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. Or Golden
Okay.
Week.
I got lucky because I wasn't thinking that far in advance, but in the future I'll have to try and plan it on weeknights when I know there's nothing going on the next day.
Yeah, be careful. My general strategy is just like other Persona games, just daytime do your social link and make sure you always have a matching persona, and then nighttime boost your stats.
That's usually a
But
pretty good move. Or like do part-time jobs during night. Oh,
yeah,
the movie theater part-time job you can do on days off from school, that pays a lot more than the coffee shop one.
that's in daytime though, I think, right?
It is, but you can do it on weekends.
Right. I mean, not everyone like on the weekends. Your social links are limited anyway, so it might be viable.
Yep, I did it one day, I think.
I'll also say that there's usually always a thing that you can do to raise 2 of your social stats instead of just 1. Like if you study, you're just gonna raise 1.
Yeah,
Or if you do
studying's not very
karaoke.
optimal so far in this game.
Yeah, there are other things like the burger is great because it's like only 1,000 yen and it's like 2 courage every time. So
Yeah. I'm waiting to see if they have the same mechanic as other Persona games where when there's rainy weather you get a boost to studying, but I haven't seen rainy weather yet, I don't think.
I haven't seen any weather actually, to be honest with you.
Yeah, is there
Yeah,
weather
I'm
in this
wondering if the
game?
weather mechanic comes into play later. Or
Or
I'm
if
sorry,
it's
it
just
can't, it
not,
was introduced in 4 and it's not a factor in 3. I don't know.
it might just not be in this game at all.
Yeah.
It's a good question. But
Right.
you know what? That reminds me of something else. Um, Another difference that I noticed between the original Persona 3 and Reload was that you could do your. I guess this is linked to the tired system as well. But you could do your social links in the day, your skill stuff at night, and then it would send you back to your bedroom. It would ask if you'd like to study before bed or go to sleep.
Right, I remember that. And if you
But
didn't go to sleep, you'd be more exhausted.
right, but you could get another, academic skill point. That feature is just not in this game, which is actually kind of disappointing because it would be nice to be able to have that extra time to get another skill point, but
If that's what
I
it takes to
digress.
remove the exhaustion system, I'm in.
Fair.
right.
Granted, it did add another thing to manage, so maybe if I go back and play it when I'm like really in a mood for something that requires a lot of resource and time management, I may enjoy the exhaustion system. It's just a different feature. Another thing to consider. Alrighty, any last comments on that, folks? All right, so let's talk about quality of life changes between FES and the original, and these have been somewhat scattered throughout. So we already mentioned the baton pass system type thing, which let me quickly mention. So far, unlike P5, when you do a baton pass, there aren't buffs to your character afterwards. It's just you can pass off your turn. Whereas P5, you would get perks from that, like the attacks would do more damage, you'd heal SP, whatever.
And I think in P5, those also were introduced after the baton mechanic itself. So it's possible that we might see
that they
it later
come,
in this
yeah,
game.
that's why I was saying so far.
Yeah.
Big one for me, I really want to point out that I know we haven't touched on so far, other than the no longer having exhaustion, that baton pass thing, directly controlling your party members, the rewind system. So you can rewind back to a previous save or like the last chance you had an opportunity to save, if I'm remembering correctly, if you progress to a certain extent in the game. So that's been convenient for me a couple of times when I realized I just did something stupid like, oh, I forgot to go see the fox today, or I forgot to buy the items when they were on sale. Speaking of which, Medicine Place items are on sale on Saturdays, armor is on sale on Mondays.
And that's going to be another good thing if you get stuck on a full moon boss, is if you need to go back and grind a little bit more before redoing that.
It's a convenient feature, and I feel like it basically what it does is it builds into the game's actual mechanics the save scumming a lot of us probably already do anyway. So like,
Yeah.
they just made it more convenient, you know?
There's another feature I really want to touch on that we haven't brought up yet, but a lot of like the Persona Fusion stuff and like the
Oh my
encyclopedia.
gosh, it's so much more streamlined.
Right, so it tells you there's like a list of all the fusions you can create with what you have in your arsenal. And then there's also a feature that allows you to buy personas, so you don't have to rely on going back and using shuffle time to get those. You know, if you've missed like Angel, or like you had Angel and then used it for a fusion, but then there's a fusion that requires that fusion and Angel. It's like you can just buy it if you really want to.
Now you do need to pull it out of shuffle time the first time to do that.
Oh yeah, of course. That's
or
what
otherwise
I mean. Like,
obtain it. But
yeah,
yes.
right. Of course. Like if you already have it, then it shows up in your little encyclopedia thing.
In your Pokedex.
Remember to register it in your compendium.
I will say, if I'm remembering correctly from the original Persona 3 2, when you fused, the abilities that your new Persona would inherit, you didn't get to choose. They were
inheriting abilities is a new thing, which is actually kind of broken. I feel like that's gonna create some like I don't know, it's gonna make some bosses easier if you can do that.
I thought they did inherit in Persona 3, but it randomly chose the abilities. Am I remembering wrong?
It does, but I'm saying the way you can choose it.
Oh yeah.
Is new.
Between that and being able to freely duplicate skill cards once a day is kind of insane.
Oh, and not to mention, shuffle time is not actually shuffling. You can just choose
whatever
it shows because it used to be you had to actually track the cards. It would show them to you, and then you'd have to use your eyes to track them.
Which is nice.
That's weird to me. It's not even challenging anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it does add some convenience, and I guess for the most part, once you got used to it, you could basically choose your cards to begin with in the older one anyway, unless they did something really wild with the shuffling. So, I don't mind it too much as a change. Any other quality of life stuff we want to touch on?
Oh, the Persona 5 phone system is kind of here in Reload.
Oh, yes,
absolutely.
Really that's a good one to point out, because you did not have that in Persona 3. So it is much easier to track what's going on now.
And even travel places, too. If someone wants to hang out, you just kind of like warp right in front of them.
Yep.
On the phone.
You do the old Enderman, whoop, whoop, and then you...
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of like tracking which social links are available on which day.
Right.
How do you feel about that coming fresh off the original Momo?
Personally, I'm kind of traditional where I always have like a little like notepad near me and write down what I want to do or who I want to talk to. So I'm still doing that regardless of the phone system, because I always just forget to check the phone. Because maybe that's because I'm coming straight off of Fez. Where you kind of have to track things yourself. I think it's convenient. I'm glad it's there. But it doesn't really matter to me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Any other quality of life stuff we want to touch on? I think those are the major ones I can remember. I know there were a lot. I probably should have taken better note of them.
I feel like we covered a lot of the major ones at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on here. Before I forget, the story everyone's been waiting for, which I should have mentioned this when we were talking about what systems we were playing on. I'm playing it on Steam. Originally, I couldn't get this game to launch. Every time I tried to boot it up, I'd get an Unreal Engine error where I couldn't boot up the game, and then I tried verifying the integrity of my game files, doing a clean install, completely doing a clean install of my graphics driver, updating my graphics driver. Variety of your standard affair for trying to fix a PC game, right? None of those things work. Let's go around the table here and see if anyone can guess what finally fixed it for me.
Turning it off and on again.
That's my
Nope.
guess.
My CS degree is useless.
I know, right?
Uninstalling, reinstalling?
Nope. Surprised nobody's suggested blowing on the cartridge yet. Do you have a guess, Ebo?
No.
Oh, did you like shake the computer around a little bit? Like kick it like an old TV? Slap
Oh,
it
dude,
inside?
yeah, you slap it to get the CRT relined or whatever. No, nope. Job, you're last. Let's see if you can get it.
I mean, Ari already stole my guess. It was just I assume that you turned it off and back on, or you uninstalled, reinstall. I can't imagine what else you would have gone through.
Oh,
This is
have
absolute-
did you update Windows?
Nope, I checked for Windows updates.
That's a
Oh.
good call, though. One time I
It
couldn't
is.
run Doom Eternal because my Windows was so out of date.
Dang.
That checks out.
So, this is absolute malarkey, okay? I plugged it into my TV. Because normally I run it on a PC monitor using DisplayPort. I plugged one of the HDMI ports into my TV. Launched it once with the TV on. Using the TV as my main monitor. Worked completely fine. Ever since then, as long as my display settings are set to duplicate to my TV, even if my TV is turned off, which it has been, launches no problem whatsoever. If I set it to only detect or only use my monitor, same issue occurs every single time. And my monitor has never given me a problem with the game.
That is mind-boggling.
It's just
Yeah, that
absolute
is
malarkey.
really
But I
weird.
wanted to put it out there because I had seen some other people post this stuff online that, yeah, this monitor thing does pop up. And I apologize. I don't have the username of somebody who had said that they used a different monitor or a different configuration and it worked. But shout outs to them for figuring that out. It did work. But I was like, oh, that's not going to work for me. My monitor's never had an issue. All the connections are good. For some reason, it did it. I never had the issue on Steam Deck. Steam Deck's been 100% fine. I'll also mention, for those of you Steam Deck players out there, this game runs great on it. Running at, I think, 40 FPS cap is what I've been doing with the settings
Wait,
on...
and
Go ahead.
Newbark, didn't it brick your Steam Deck?
Oh, yeah, I thought it bricked my Steam Deck. Fun fact about that.
I love how you just got done saying, yeah, it runs perfectly fine. Oh, but one
Oh,
little
yeah, but
thing, it might
it
break
runs
it.
perfectly fine until it bricks it, and then, you know, you just buy a new one, right? No, so the way what happened with the Steam Deck, if you hold the power button on the Steam Deck for, I think it's a couple of seconds, it'll turn on. But then if you hold it just a little bit longer than that, it immediately shuts off, so it looks like it's trying to boot and crashes. So you have to hold it just right, and then it powers on. So I was trying to reboot it multiple times, and it just kept relaunching on me. Absolutely wild. So the same day that I thought I couldn't get it to run on my desktop, I had it running on Steam Deck, and then I tried to close out of it at one point, and I thought it crashed, and I tried to just like manually reboot my Steam Deck, and I couldn't get it to turn back on past the Steam logo, and I'm like, this game bricked my deck, and I was so angry. And then I realized what it was. So stupid. I should have checked more carefully, but yeah, my Steam Deck settings are shadow quality high, custom graphics quality, 100% rendering scale, and then running with the built-in 40 FPS cap, and the games run great for me on there. And I did not come up with those settings, I just found them online. Any last comments before we move on to our final section, Mentalgen?
I don't have a crazy story like that. I mean, not as crazy. I just have a really annoying story about GameStop while trying to obtain this game.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
So so originally I pre-ordered on Amazon, and it was just saying order received. It wasn't giving me any sort of delivery date. So I, canceled it, and then I checked, the GameStops near me, seeing who had it, so I can just pick it up. And so one of them near me had it. I just did a pickup, curbside pickup, whatever, order. I entered all of my payment information, press, place order. It takes the money, and then it says order failed because I get the little notification from my bank saying,
tried to
this
rob you.
charge is pending. So it was, I wasn't able to use that money because it was pending, but GameStop still tried to take it despite the order failing. So I was out $70 for about a week until it reversed. So thank you,
Absolutely
GameStop, for
ridiculous.
that. Yeah, I just went into the store and bought it.
They tried to take the money and run.
Yeah, I mean, it did reverse because it was pending, and obviously GameStop realized that, oh, this order didn't actually go through, so we're going to give you your money back.
At
It only
least they
took about
fixed
7 days.
Only 7 days. I tried to pre-order the game like 3 weeks before it launched, and the cashier attendant was like, "Oh yeah, that won't come until February 29th or something like that." I'm like, "Wait, what? Why? The game comes out like February 1st. Why is it taking that long?" And then they just like wouldn't let me pre-order the game.
Thank you, GameStop.
Power to the
Yeah.
players. Anyway. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the last two things before we wrap up tonight, y'all. We're already going just a little bit over time. Let's talk about thoughts on the final boss. We'll kind of just go around here if that's okay with everybody. Thoughts
We
on the
haven't
final
gotten that
boss?
far yet.
Haven't gotten that far. Oh. Or no, you're
What?
right. Thoughts on the final boss of this chapter, aka the one after you reach floor 22 and then board the train to fight the boss and try to prevent Junpei from dying on his own.
I mean, you don't need to do Tartarus, do you?
That's a good.
I don't think you do, right? Right?
That's right.
Right,
You can do the
Mono?
entire day, do the entire game without ever going to Tartarus.
There doesn't seem to be any hard requirement. It's just ready
Any
or
of us
not.
tried. Did anyone not make it to floor 22 and then fight the boss?
No.
I don't remember. I don't remember what floor it was on.
So we don't know for certain, but at least the way the story, like, it's structured, it at least seems like you could, because you don't fight the boss within Tartarus. I don't know if
Yeah, but
anybody.
then you wouldn't be a high enough level to beat the boss.
Interesting. Maybe we'll have to do a little research into that, but I'm scared of finding spoilers too. So, but anyway,
Same.
thoughts on that boss, and then anticipations, predictions, and things you're looking forward to in the next chapter. Let's just go around and say that, and then we'll wrap up if that's cool with everybody.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Starting with me, I already said the final boss took me several attempts to beat. The time limit and stuff added a lot of extra pressure, and I kind of liked how they did a separate scene for the final boss fight, where you had to board the train. You had Junpei getting a little bit careless. His character and his tendency to be a little bit jealous of the main character as being the party leader really shone through here, and I think it showed how much he gets a little bit frustrated with not being able to be the leader of the group. But I'm curious to see if his character is going to humble a little bit after it almost got him into a very dangerous situation right before this boss fight. As for the boss fight itself, this one was definitely pretty challenging, at least for my party. I had access to lightning magic, wind magic, fire magic, and ice magic, and I couldn't hit any of its weaknesses. So my strategy basically boiled down to, once I used my skill card to get the medium wind damage attack, just spam that and try to keep my main pro tag up while the others healed up and or contributed damage while they could, etc., etc. Keep the weakness, or hit the weaknesses of the minions that were spawned, then baton pass to main character to be able to get off another wind attack and beat the time limit. But on Merciless, like I said before, that time limit, it crunches down on you. It did for me, at least. I'm not a perfect min-max player, but I do try to be pretty efficient with how I spend my time, where and when I can, and I could feel the time limit. It adds some extra pressure and intensity to the fight as well. So, all right. And then let's go around. Boss fight thoughts. You're up, Mon.
So, I mean, since I already played the game, I already had expectations. I thought it was pretty cool. I think it really sets up sort of the dynamic between C's members, especially the second years. Um, and I think it's a classic Persona boss where it's just figuring out how to do the most damage output while not dying. Um, so I had fun with it. I mean, since I'm playing on normal, I mentioned how it kind of feels easier than the original Persona 3. The time limit wasn't much of a big deal for me. I just kind of put all my damage towards the boss and kind of ignored the minions. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's a really good first boss. It creates that level of stress of you know the time. Time continues to move, and it's inevitable that it will continue on. And I like that. That's a really cool first boss. As for anticipations and expectations for the next chapter, I'm just really excited to play more. Like I after the game released, I played the quote unquote first chapter within that weekend, and then the rest of the weekend was pretty much itching to just get to the rest of the game because of
Well,
the
you tried to
the
unlock
first.
Fortnite guy.
Yeah, so I basically just went on a Fortnite binge while I tried to constrain myself to not open Persona 3 Reload and then just proceed to play the rest of the game. But I felt like that wouldn't
Appreciate
be
your
fair to everyone
self-control.
else. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm just excited to play more.
Absolutely valid. I will say, the one thing that brought up for me is I also want to point out how ridiculously broken the protagonist superpower is when you're like, well, I don't know how to stop a train. I'm just gonna pull a lever and hope it works. At the end of the chapter.
Plot armor.
Plot armor.exe. We love it. Similarly, though, no, I'm super excited to continue with this game. I just finished this chapter this morning, but as I'm grinding through, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm curious to see where the characters go. There's an air of mystery about this, which I think Evo's right. It's a little bit slower in how it's unraveling, but I don't mind that. I think for me, it's making me a lot more curious to see where things go. And out of like the three Persona games Atlas acknowledges, was still the one I knew the least about. So very curious to see how it continues to unfold, digging the music, digging the aesthetics. A lot of the quality of life improvements I think are making it a much more approachable game for first time players of it. So we'll see. Alright, Ebo, you're up. Thoughts on the boss fight, anticipations.
I I found the design was interesting, being like a black and white kind of design, but I'm not a big fan of timed boss fights. I don't like being rushed through things, so it wasn't necessarily my favorite boss fight, but I did like how it was like on a moving train, and somehow this train could move while everything else was frozen in time. That was not explained. I wonder if it will be explained.
I do find that interesting. One thing I want to point out similarly, Mitsuru has the bike that she said is specially designed for her to be able to travel at night. That is, it's an automatic. It's not like a bicycle. It's a motorcycle. So
Yeah.
combine that with the air of mystery around her. I'm very curious to see how her character continues to unravel. I also feel like it's heavily hinted at that oh, please don't tell me Akihiko is gonna be rejoining the party soon. So I'm wondering if he's our next party member, and if so, I'm very curious to see how he plays in the game.
His voice is so cool.
It is. His voice is fantastic. I like how we're both saying that, even though I'm playing the Japanese dub, you're playing the English dub. So I guess he just has a great voice actor on both ways, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're up, Ari. Anticipations, thoughts on that boss fight?
Oh, cool. I thought the boss fight was really cool. I thought it was a really awesome shift of pace because Persona, I mean, it never usually requires the fastest of reflexes. I mean, pretty much the whole game can act as a pause screen if you just like leave it at a dialogue or even in the middle of a
A
battle and
very
come back
stylish
after
pause
like
screen.
making food. Yeah, an incredibly stylish pause screen, yes. Um, so it was actually, I thought it was a really cool and unique challenge to try and like do all of that stuff in a time limit, and the fact that it kept like rapidly getting shorter and shorter. I just thought the whole scene and presentation was really, really cool and awesome. I did have, I mean, I was able to beat the boss on the first attempt, but again, I'm not playing as hard of difficulty, and I did have a couple of my like party members like die at some points. They'd like revive one, then another would die, and then I would just keep focusing on the boss. And yeah,
That's
overall, I thought it was really, really cool.
that's the thing with Persona combat, right? You're fine until you aren't. It is so momentum based that it's like you're doing great. You're just breezing through things, and then one thing goes wrong and it just spirals completely out of control.
Yes, suddenly there's like a move you like never anticipated the enemy would have, and then you like half your party's just gone.
I feel like that's
Yeah.
how it often goes with these games. Like even if you're playing on normal difficulty, if the momentum starts to sway against you for a minute, it can very quickly fall apart if you don't rebound like right away or have a powerful item as an answer to this tough situation. So,
Oh yeah, it was really, really cool. Um, so for things I'm looking forward to, mainly it's like other people said, I want more party members. I am so tired of just having the same three. I want more variety, I want more people. Hopefully we can get Cool Voice Boy in there and he can be our
we'll
next
see.
party member. But yeah, that's what I'm excited for.
I do want to say on the party member note, I've talked a lot about wanting to learn about Mitsuru. I want to learn more about Takebo's backstory too, because I feel like those two have a lot of mystery and intrigue about them. Same deal with
Hmm.
Akihiko and the guy that he was talking to at the hospital.
Oh
They're,
yeah.
they're setting up a lot of things here that I really want to see where they go as we progress. So, absolutely. All right, J0B3, you're up. Wow, we've reached the point where he doesn't even respond to it. Okay, Joe,
Hold on,
you're up.
uh, hold on a second. I was thinking.
That's not allowed.
So I would say, well, going back to the train and the whole boss fight, because I know you guys are talking about anticipation, but I just had to say, I thought that whole sequence was pretty cool. I thought it dragged on a little bit before getting to the boss. I think I would have preferred just a couple fights and without all these sections like walking in between the train cars, but um it was a little too long, but I thought it was a really cool boss and
You didn't enjoy Persona Uncharted?
no. I don't even get that reference, so I don't sorry, didn't work on me.
Rip.
I thought the time pressure of the boss fight was a little intense. Towards the end, I was just kind
No,
of
it
like
wasn't. We
rushing.
weren't camping. Go ahead.
Yikes.
I don't even I don't even get what joke you just made. And I'm not gonna try to understand it. So the yeah, I was like towards the end when the boss spawned like the minions. I was just like rushing the boss, like Mono said, because for me, I didn't have that much time left. I was like trying to you know, see if there was a weakness with the boss, but obviously there wasn't.
Yeah.
And I wasted a lot of time just like coming up with what to do, and before I knew it, there was like a minute left. So it was kind of fun and intense.
It turned into
Towards
kind of
the
like a
end,
classic Sega game,
I
where it
wasn't
was you
expecting that.
memorize the attack patterns and then go back the second time or the third time or the fourth time and get it right. Like a classic
Yeah,
Sega arcade game kind of thing, where there's some memorization involved to get through it.
um, a little bit. I usually don't like that, but I didn't feel like it was like that. At least for me. I mean, I only retried it once because I was playing on hard. But yeah. And as for the next anticipation for the next chapter, I don't know. The I hope the boss fights and just general like, yeah, I guess just the boss fights, and I hope it becomes more connected with the overall story because it seems kind of random. Just like at the full moon, there's just a random, shadow hijacking a train. In like the first bosses of the other two Persona games I've played, were a lot more relevant to the story going on.
Fair enough.
I'm
Fair enough.
hoping for more of that.
I will say
But
on that note that at the right after the boss fight, if I'm remembering the cutscene correctly, so this was very end of the chapter that we played. Mitsuru and the professor were having a conversation, and I think she had said, "Do you think it's time?" or something like that. So I'm thinking we're going to start to get more answers as to how these boss fights connect to the story and what exactly is going on here.
yeah,
Does anybody else remember that, or am I going crazy?
I vaguely remember that. Also, unfortunately, there are some spoilers that I already know about the
Okay.
game.
Okay, so you have to
Um,
be careful what you say.
yeah, no, I'm not. I mean, I know what those spoilers are, and I'm not going to say them, but
Much appreciated.
it is a
Alright.
little unfortunate. But there's some cool stuff that I know. I'm sure we're gonna get to.
Awesome. I will point out one last thing that was driving me a little bit nuts during the boss fight is they were reusing character models from other enemies you'd been fighting in Tartarus, but giving them different names. So you had to be able to figure that out. 1 second. So they were reusing character models from enemies you'd been fighting in Tartarus, and maybe you'd learn the weaknesses of those. And they would change the characters' names and weaknesses. So like that was throwing me off a little bit at first. It's not that big of a deal, but it's one thing I observed. And I think you all noticed that as well
Yeah,
when
I
we were
did.
talking about it. Yeah. And one last note, the boss, and credits to Ebo for pointing this out in a conversation we had earlier today before Game Club, had an arcana associated with it. And it was Priestess. Does that mean anything? Or imply anything?
To me, it just implies that all of the bosses will have tarot card associations. I don't know if there's any real. I think I know who the priestess is in this game, but yeah, I don't really.
I don't.
Yeah.
I have
I
no
won't. I
clue.
won't speak anymore. I won't speak anymore on it because I already know things.
Fair enough. Alright. Any thoughts on that, Ebo? You were the one that originally brought it up.
I just feel like there's something behind. They wouldn't have associations with Arcanas if it wasn't for a reason.
I agree.
Maybe the reason is that it's a Persona game.
It has to be more than just that.
Or they're
Or I'll
trying to
be
mislead us.
disappointed.
But yeah, I agree. There's probably something to that. It could be hinting to some sort of connection to a new party member we're going to get or something like that. Alrighty, folks. We already went over time a little bit here. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up for the evening? Alright. Gonna take that as a no. So thank you for everyone who tuned in to our first episode of... well, not first episode of Game Club. Episode 1 of our Persona 3 Reload Game Club. Next week we'll be discussing Chapter 2, which goes up to the second full moon of the game. And we'll be streaming next Sunday, February 18th at 7:30 p.m. EST, right here on twitch.tv/Neospace Network. So if you are more than welcome, and we would be more than honored if you join us back here yet again to go space gazing and discussing this awesome new release. And you can watch any previous episodes of Game Club on youtube.com/Neospace Network. Make sure to follow our Twitter as well, where we'll put up notifications about us going live, posting new videos on YouTube, etc., on at Neospace Network. And of course, thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time in the Neospace.